Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 885B, and today's date is February 4th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. Expanding Airfield in Syria while Turkey Continues with Troop Buildup. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, at this point, we're all starting to realize that the government has been spying on all of us. Not just the NSA, but many of the agencies. We know that they're setting up behavioral systems, software, to predict crimes, to figure out who we are speaking to, who we are associated with, what groups we're associated with, and they're trying to correlate all this into a database. And this is on purpose, as we discussed before in other reports, because they're worried about civil unrest. They're worried about the people rising up. They're worried about when this whole system comes crumbling down and we see the economic collapse, that all this is going to occur. Well, they're taking this to another level right now. And the U.S. Justice Department, they're considering legal changes to combat what it sees as a rising threat from domestic anti-government extremists. Now, extremist groups motivated by a range of U.S.-born philosophies, present a clear and present danger. And this is coming from John Carlin from the Justice Department. And he's the Justice Department's Chief of National Security. And he's using the example right now of what happened in Oregon. Now, he's trying to make the case that the anti-government activists, this whole thing is increasing. They're seeing more cases of this around the country. And he made the example that in recent years, anti-government activists, like those who occupied the wildlife preserve in eastern Oregon last month, have regained prominence. So they're trying to convince the public that there's a problem in this country, and it looks like there are many anti-government extremists out there. And he was trying to make the cases all around the country, and it really failed because he was talking about, different disputes, a murder, a burglary, and it had nothing to do with anti-government extremists. Now, if you don't agree with the government, he considers this anti-government. I say those people who don't agree with the government, they're expressing and using the First Amendment to say, you know what? I don't agree. I don't agree with what the government is doing. But you see what's happening here. As the economy continually collapses, those people who don't believe the government, those people that don't go along with the government, they are the enemy of the government. And they don't care what the Constitution says or the Bill of Rights, because they're going to go after those people. And we're seeing they're starting to create these departments, these groups, these agencies to go after those people. It's already starting now. You see where we're heading at this point. This is why they're trying to take away the weapons from the people. This is why they don't want people to be armed. Because those people who are armed, it's going to be a harder time to round them up. Because what do you think, it's just one or two people? Think about how many people there are in the country. Think about how many people don't agree with the government. Think about the civil unrest when the economy comes crumbling down. Think about those people who are going to blame the government. Even though they try to convince everyone this is happening because another group or a country did it. Many people are going to say, no, this happened on your watch, and it was happening for a long time. And we can see how all this is starting to fit together right now. Now, out in North Korea, Japan reported that North Korea is getting ready to launch a missile, a ballistic missile, and then it turns out they're going to launch a communication satellite. Now Japan is saying, well, North Korea is moving around their mobile missile launcher inside their own country. Well, I hate to say this, but countries are allowed to do this. And they're saying they're moving it near the East Coast. Well, they can move it anywhere they want in their country. The U.S. can move their missile systems anywhere. Russia can. Any country can move anything they want inside their own country. But what I find very interesting is that Japan says that if North Korea launches any type of rocket, Japan has put its military on alert to shoot down any rocket that threatens its territory. So if North Korea launches their communication satellite and Japan feels like it's a threat, they're going to shoot it down. Well, this is going to be a problem if they do actually do this, because this definitely will start a war, because North Korea is going to say, okay, you just shot down our communication satellite. This is an act of war. But you can see how they're pushing this propaganda as hard as they possibly can, because they want war started. We are now seeing U.S. troops and Rangers. They have arrived in South Korea to, of course, participate in drills. And this is the 1st Special Forces Group and the 75th Ranger Regiment, which were previously involved in the assassinations in Iraq and Afghanistan. So why are they really there? What is their real mission? Is it to go into North Korea? And is it to assassinate someone? To get the war started? We're going to have to keep an eye on this to see where this goes, because they're not there for a joint drill. No way. We see out in Ukraine, Ukrainian forces are continually shelling Donetsk, and now they're intensifying military activity in Lugansk. So here we are once again. They're pushing and provoking both areas. They want them to fire back. They want them to shell their forces, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to turn around and say, out of nowhere, Donetsk and Lugansk, the southeastern areas, they started to shell the Kiev forces. Well, the Minsk II ceasefire, it's off. Here we go. We're going to war. This is what they're pushing right now. Now we see the UN, the puppet government of Libya, they're creating a draft for a new constitution in Libya. And they want to make 3 capitals in Libya. Of course, the original constitution says the government that occupies Tripoli is the government of Libya. And they want to separate Libya into 3 different areas with different capitals, because they're having a problem right now, because the elected government inside Libya, elected by the people, they don't want a unity government. They're already the government. And this is why the parliament continually rejects the unity government. But the U.S., the coalition forces, they can't have this. They need Libya, and they need a puppet government in there. So they're trying another tactic to separate it into 3 different capitals. And one will be the political capital, which they can stay in Tripoli. That will be their little area. We're going to have the oil capital, and we'll have the tourism capital. Now, we can see this is not going to work. The elected government in Tripoli is not going to allow this to happen. We can see already that the U.S., Italy, France, UK, everything is ready to go. They're ready to go, and they're ready to invade Libya. They continually are putting the propaganda out there, letting everyone know they have to go in because of the Islamic State, but we know the real reason. And we will see the invasion of Libya once again. Now, a couple reports ago, we talked about how the U.S. is cozying up to the Kurds. And at that time, I mentioned that the U.S. was going to be pushing the Kurds to separate themselves from Iraq and, create their own country. Almost like Crimea. But of course, the United States doesn't recognize Crimea. They had a referendum there, and they voted themselves away from Ukraine. United States only approves of this if they're backing it. And it looks like all of this is coming true. Because we see that the Kurdistan president, Mossad Barzani, has declared that the time has come and the situation is now suitable for the Kurdish people to make a decision through a referendum of their fate. It's amazing how the United States is behind what they want to be behind and support what they want to support, like the Kurds having a referendum. But when Crimea wants to have a referendum, it's illegal. Well, no, it's not illegal. And we see Iraq, they're not going to like this too much. So basically what Barzani wants to see is if his people are ready to declare their own country. And this is the first step. And this is the only reason the U.S. is cozying up to the Kurds. Well, they have other agendas. But the agenda is to separate the Middle East into different portions. Kurds, Shiite, Sunnis. This is still their goal, their agenda. And they're going to continually try to do this. Now, we realize that Turkey is building up troops on the border. Turkey's been firing into Syria. We understand that Turkey is supporting the Islamic State, supplying the rebels. And Russia, right now, is asking Turkey to allow them to conduct an observation flight over the Turkish territory under the Open Skies Treaty. Turkey says, oh, absolutely not. Because Russia said these are the areas where we want to fly over. They want to do it on an AN-30B plane over certain areas between February 1st to the 5th. This is when they were asking for. And the Turkish government said, no, we're not going to allow this. Now, this is very odd because they all signed the Open Sky Treaty. And Russia's saying they don't want us to fly over this area because they don't want us to see the troop buildup. They don't want us to see the military assets. They don't want us to see Turkey supporting the Islamic State and bringing in military assets. And Russia is saying, we want everyone to remember when the U.S., Ukraine, the U.K. were out there using propaganda saying Russia was building up troops, we allowed Turkey 5 times, the UK, the United States, Ukraine, to fly over these areas 32 times. That wasn't mentioned in the corporate media. Using the Open Sky Treaty. And if you go back to some of my reports, we reported on that every single time the U.S., the U.K., Turkey, Ukraine flew over Russia. And we reported at that time there were never any troops. This is why they didn't have photographs of it, because they do take pictures when they fly over. Now, NATO is staying very quiet about this. The U.S. is staying very quiet about this because they're planning an invasion into Syria. Right now, we know the talks are suspended. And Russia is saying they have evidence right now. And this is coming from Konashenkov. We have satellite imagery that Turkey is building up their troops, their military assets on the border of Syria. And they're preparing for an invasion. Now, I'm going to say this is exactly what they're doing. Because right now, they're running out of time. Russia is bombing the Islamic State. They're losing more and more territory. They've destroyed the oil convoy for Turkey. Turkey right now is reinforcing their border. Looks like they're getting ready for war. We know that Jay Johnson is out there from DHS reinforcing the border, setting up balloons, setting up and building walls. It's amazing how he can't do this here in the U.S., but they can use billions of dollars out in Turkey to do this. Well, this is because they're getting ready and prepared for war. And Russia is saying they have satellite intelligence that, yes, they are preparing for this. They're preparing for an invasion. Now, we know the peace talks completely fell apart. They're suspended right now. The U.S. and France are blaming Assad and Russia. And of course, this is not why they fell apart. We know the U.S. and the coalition forces never wanted these peace talks to go anywhere. It was a complete dead end because the only thing on their agenda was to remove Assad, remove Assad, remove Assad. That's their goal. They have nothing else. They wanted to buy some time. They had a ceasefire. Not with the Islamic State. They had a ceasefire with the rebels, and they were trying to buy time, but it didn't work. And what we're seeing right now is that the U.S., with the Syrian Kurds, they are expanding the air base in Syria that they have, the Abu Hajar Airport. Now, the runway right now is 700 meters. The U.S. is extending it to 1,300 meters. And the question is, why are they extending this runway? Well, they need to extend it to 1,300 meters because it will allow a C-130 transport plane to land there. Very interesting. They're going to use this airbase in the Kurdish region to attack certain portions of Syria, to bring in troops on a C-130 transport, to bring in military assets on the C-130 transport. They are building up for a major ground invasion. Saudi Arabia right now, they're out there saying they're ready to send ground troops to Syria. Forget about ready. They're already on their way. Everything has been prepared. And I've said this a couple of reports ago, saying that the Middle East is going to light up. Well, it definitely is. It is going to light up. Because the U.S. has no choice at this time. Their backs are against the wall. Russia is destroying the Islamic State. Libya is falling apart. They can't get anywhere in Yemen. Iraq doesn't want the Turkish troops and the U.S. troops in Iraq. And they have nothing left. They have nothing left here. They know they need to do something. And this is why we see this next event coming. Now, over the weekend, we know the Super Bowl is going to be on Sunday, February 7th. The U.S. Air Force, don't worry, will be patrolling the skies over the Super Bowl because they're going to intercept and they're going to be prepared for what in the skies? We really don't know. But they're making a very big deal about this. I've already seen reports saying that there is no credible threat for the Super Bowl. Do I think something's going to happen? Well, they've been drilling for a couple of weeks right now. They have the Air Force flying and patrolling the skies over the Super Bowl. There's a lot of people that are going to be there with cameras. I mean, they would have to do something huge just in this area. And they would have to be so good that nobody can capture the incident on camera. Now, everyone believes, well, everyone's just going to bring their phone. And all the government has to do at that point is shut down the cell towers, and they won't be able to transmit pictures, and a lot of these phones, have the kill switch. But a lot of people are going to bring other cameras with telephoto lenses, because it is the Super Bowl. You want to get these pictures. You want to film certain things. They can't stop those cameras. And we can see how they carry out their false flags. They always have certain things they can't cover up, and they leak out, and of course YouTube takes it down, and they try to hide it, but it always comes out, and people see this. But what's very interesting about all of this, since they're doing all of this, we might see something maybe occur someplace outside of the Super Bowl, maybe, a mile or two away, saying they interrupted some type of an event where they were trying to get to the Super Bowl. That might happen. The FAA, they are saying they don't want people flying drones within 32 miles of the Super Bowl. Think about it, 32 miles. So if you're at your house and you put a drone up, they're saying they might shoot it down. What don't they want you to see? Very interesting. We're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully. All eyes need to be ready to see anything that's going on. So when we look at all of this, we can see at one point why they would want to do this. But it seems like this might be a complete disaster if they try it, because there's just too many people. If you notice, a lot of the false flags usually occur with a limited number of people, limited number of cameras. And this is something that's very, very big. So I'm thinking it might happen in a smaller area where all eyes are on the Super Bowl and there's not that many people around someplace else. But we're going to have to watch the situation very, very carefully to see what happens and what occurs. And at this point, we can see we're coming to a point where they're going to push their agenda hard. And eventually, and I think very soon, they will have the big event. They will create an event in multiple cities. And they will have cyber attacks on the financial system. And at this point, everyone needs to be ready and prepared, because we see how fast the economy is crumbling down. If you are preparing, continue to prepare. Do not stop. You don't want to be running to the store with everyone else. They're preparing for civil unrest. They're preparing for riots. This should tell you something. And we need to be ready. If you haven't started, go right to lifereliance.com. They have bug out bags, water filtration systems, seeds. You can customize your orders. If you're prepping right now, continue to prep. Get your food, get your water, get your toiletries, get your medical supplies, get your gold, get your silver, get your cash, get a weapon to protect your family. Have plans to bug out at a moment's notice. Have a meeting place for your kids just in case something happens in the middle of the day and maybe they're at school. But whatever you do, be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.